Well, it's been a while since I played and reviewed a Spyro game now, hasn't it? I want to take this time to apologize for the long wait, but I assure you that I'll be getting the rest of these reviews out in a weekly manner. I've actually been playing and finishing all of the other Spyro games I'll be covering in the next month or so. So by the time this is out, I should only have to write the scripts for the reviews. As for now, there's a greater purpose on the horizon, and its name is Spyro Attack of the Rhynocs, or Spyro Adventure in Europe. And from my understanding, out of all the GBA games, this seems to be the fan favorite, although I've seen almost no one reminisce fondly about it or so much as talk about it in passing besides my pal Exo Paradigm Gamer, of course. It seems like most people have sort of forgotten about Attack of the Rhynocs, which is a shame because growing up I remember having a lot of fun with it. But now that I've replayed it today and actually fully completed it, how does it hold up? Is Attack of the Rhynocs just another awful Spyro game, or one of the greats? Let's start out with that oh so compelling plot, which begins in the professor's lab. Yeah, remember this fellow? You know, the genius that always screws everything up? So just like clockwork, that's exactly what happens. All seems peaceful in this laboratory as Spyro and the professor are just hanging out. Spyro even gets to play in his virtual playground, which is totally not an innuendo for something else. Then the professor reveals this device that can view other dimensions and locations, which he intends to use to keep an eye on the dastardly Ripto. After Spyro returns from exploring the professor's virtual playground, the professor reveals a robot butler which immediately malfunctions and over-circuits the professor's entire lab. This also causes the rift that the professor was using to spy on Ripto to rapidly expand. In shock, the professor takes a huge exposition dump on Spyro as he fears Ripto might come out of the hole. He explains that there exist hearts in the various realms and he used one heart to create the rift to spy on Ripto, but he'll need the 12 other hearts to close it. As if it were fate or some plot convenience, once he's done explaining Spyro's main quest, Ripto appears and vows to conquer the entire world because it turned out so great for him before. In Ripto's rage, enter the dragonfly in Season of Flame. What's even more strange is that Spyro and the professor do nothing to stop Ripto in this moment but shout angrily at him. Because of this, he's able to warp them away and thus begins the game free from really any story whatsoever. Like most Spyro games, the plot takes a back seat to the gameplay, which I guess is nice since it wasn't too interesting to begin things. I mean, this whole structure of Ripto coming back to terrorize the Dragon Realms has been seemingly done to death. I like Ripto whenever he appears during the game because I always enjoy his angry humor and malicious threats, but part of me wishes he had died for good back in Spyro 2. Speaking of the writing, it's alright. The dialogue between characters is nothing mind-blowing and certainly won't get you more invested in the characters here. Maybe it's because there's just less of it, but I digress. As for its presentation, Attack of the Rhynocs looks leagues better than Season of Ice or Season of Flame did. If you couldn't tell, Spyro's character model is a lot more colorful and stands out from the environment a lot more. I don't know if this is just me, but the whole game just seems more colorful and vibrant, because I really like the looks of pretty much all the worlds here. The first level you play around in is the virtual playground, and I love how it's designed with its cardboard trees, artificial landscape, and electrified ocean. This great visual presentation extends to almost every level in the game, whether that be Dragon Shores or Moneybags' mansion. Unlike Season of Ice, there's a lot of level variety. If I had to pick a favorite, I'd have to go with Yeti Serengeti purely because of how much I like its snow and ice aesthetic. However, that's not to say everything in Attack of the Rhynocs is perfect. For one thing, the Sergeant Bird levels don't look that great, and the jagged scrolling of the background background makes me feel kind of sick. His face is the only thing that makes these type of levels bearable because, well, look at that glorious piece of art. Now, if that isn't a face that makes you instantly want to search up Sergeant Byrd Rule 34, I don't know what will. Nevertheless, the game is no stranger to frame rate dips. Throughout my 2 playthroughs, I would experience multiple instances where the frame rate would stutter, and one time the game actually crashed on me. I'm not sure if that was just the emulator I was playing on, but I know for a fact the frame rate drops are universal, so yay? Aside from that, the game is technically solid. What's better is that the soundtrack is absolutely phenomenal. When compared to the season titles, Attack of the Rhynocs blows both of them out of the water in terms of music quality. Music is all subjective, but I personally love this OST. From the title theme to basically every world theme, every track is upbeat, synthy, and catchy. They make all the levels enjoyable to romp around in, which is great if you're going for that precious 100% completion. My favorite theme from the soundtrack would have to be Cheetah Spot Spa because I love its melody that sounds like something straight out of a Mario Kart installment. So now that we have all that out of the way, just how is the main focus of Attack of the Rhynocs, the gameplay? Well, it's very similar to the other 2 GBA games, Season of Ice and Season of Flame, but for those who need some catching up, here's the basic mechanics. You take control of Spyro, for the most part, who can run around, charge with his horns by pressing the R button, breathe fire, ice, and electricity, jump, glide and hover, and talk to NPCs. If you've ever played any Spyro game, you'll have no trouble getting used to these controls. Using the D-pad is probably the best way to go, by the way, because I tried to use an analog stick when platforming, and it did not work out well at all. In terms of Spyro's overall control, movement is tight and hardly ever an issue. The only time it does become an issue is when you're charging around, because Spyro is so finicky then. Since there are numerous cliffs that lead to Spyro's demise, I always found myself being super extra careful when charging. That's not necessarily a problem, but it does slow down the pace of the game when you have to be continuously on edge for fear of charging off a cliff. See, this wouldn't be such a huge problem if the level design was a bit more accustomed to Spyro's controls. On one hand, I feel as if levels should have been a bit larger to compensate for Spyro's slippery charging. This would also prevent the stages from becoming too claustrophobic because some levels, like the Fairy Library, are so tightly packed that platforming and moving around is not the most enjoyable thing in the world. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, the level design has a lot of strengths. Since progression is based on collecting these hearts, which is accomplished through other quests involving collecting other MacGuffins, levels are laid out in such a manner that you can get all the MacGuffins on your first run-through. While exploration is mandatory, levels are not expansive or anything, which is great because it's almost impossible to get lost. In every stage, there are familiar set pieces that can be used to guide you on your questing. I've said in the past I prefer more non-linear levels for Spyro games, but I do appreciate the linearity here for some reason. Maybe it's because my tastes changed or something, but I didn't find collecting MacGuffins tedious like I did with Season of Ice or Season of Flame. The one time I did get bored was in Rhynocs and Clocks, which was mostly because I had been playing for so long that the playstyle got a little tiresome. This is precisely why I think Attack of the Rhynocs is better played in short bursts rather than all at once. I mean, when you strip each world down to its base, the objective is always the same, and that does get dull after a while. But by far the biggest issue I have with Attack of the Rhynocs is the same problem I had with Season of Ice and Season of Flame. The ice isometric perspective. Now, I know a large portion of Spyro games don't mind the camera in the GBA games, and you would think I would come to not mind it after playing all 3 games on the Game Boy. Unfortunately, that was simply not the case. I'll be honest, the isometric perspective is the one aspect that keeps me from replaying all of these titles. I had trouble adjusting to it in the Season games, and Attack of the Rhynocs is no exception. In the Virtual Playground, which is essentially a tutorial zone, I spent over 10 minutes trying to properly line up my glide, then hover to reach this distant platform. I could never gauge where I needed to hover because of the perspective. As I kept playing and was tasked with more long glides, I would find myself flying off or not being able to reach a platform, which would cause a death, resulting in me having to go all the way back to the beginning only to venture back, try again, and die. It's extremely frustrating, and I don't know if this is just me, but when a video game makes me repeat the same seemingly impossible task over and over, I start to feel sick. Attack of the Rhynocs made me physically ill whenever I had to do these stupid glides. Not only that, but Spyro's breath ability is a bit too lenient. I used to believe his breath ability was hard to aim, but after going back to test this out, my evaluation quickly changed. I think a part of the reason why I thought aiming his breaths were such a huge issue before was the isometric perspective. For just regular platforming and running around, it is tolerable though. Besides, these jumps are few and far between, so I guess they aren't too horrible. If Spyro's playstyle doesn't suit your fancy, you can always play as Sergeant Bird or Agent 9. Yep, no Sheila in this installment, which is kind of nice because I didn't care much for her levels in Season of Flame. So Agent 9 plays almost exactly as he did in Season of Flame, except now he uses a vacuum gun, akin to Luigi's Mansion, instead of a blaster. His missions also now revolve around you sucking up enemies from portholes or rescuing Agents 1 through 8 in a side-scroller stage. This stage layout is pretty simple and straightforward, but the vines here are cool. Haven't really seen much use of hanging vines in a Spyro game. All in all, his stages are decent, but they aren't unique or too entertaining. Every time I encountered an Agent 9 stage, I felt like my brain shut off and I was just on autopilot. The same can be said about the Sergeant Bird stages, which are a bit more non-linear. These missions involve you taking control of Sergeant Bird, who plays like he did in Spyro 3, to rescue other penguins. Using your flying abilities, you pick up penguins and bring them wherever this glowing red arrow tells you to go. Sometimes there will be obstacles in your way, but those can be easily destroyed with your rockets, so they're never an issue. Because of this, his levels are pretty much devoid of any real challenge or tense moments. I hate to say this, but Sergeant Bird is a drag to play as. The lack of any variety to the gameplay makes his missions unbelievably boring. The track that plays during his levels is the only redeeming quality, to be honest. Oh, and the bosses in Attack of the Rhynocs are pathetic. Every single boss is so easy that it makes me question why these were even classified as bosses. Most of them can be defeated in less than 40 seconds, and none ever posed a challenge to me. Spoiler alert in 3, 2, 1. Okay, the final boss is terrible. Ripto is such a dastardly villain, and at the end of the game, his big finale is so simple and anticlimactic. After dangling the professor over lava and threatening to actually murder him, he initiates this big final fight in which Spyro can beat him in less than a minute. It's not fun or clever in the slightest, and when it's all over, the butler appears out of nowhere to save the day and thwart Ripto. So with the professor saved and you having fully completed the game, what do you get as your reward? The ability to play Sergeant Bird's levels in the form of a time trial. Now, I don't know about you, but this is a hugely disappointing reward, and it sucks considering just how much time I invested into Attack of the Rhynocs. It felt like the game was building up to something grand, but all it did was let me down. Overall, I'd say Attack of the Rhynocs is indeed a good Spyro game. I know I just said the ending and completionist reward are stupid and disappointing, but I did have fun playing as Spyro for the most part, even though the concept of collecting MacGuffins for other MacGuffins grows tiresome. That didn't stop me from enjoying my experience. And while Sergeant Bird's and Agent 9's missions are lackluster, they don't ruin the game or anything. Besides, the visual presentation is amazing and that soundtrack is a joy to listen to. Sure, the story isn't anything special, but there is one funny moment from it. You know, where the professor asks Spyro to explore his digital playground. Anyways, I'd recommend, out of all the GBA games, you play this one. It is clearly the best out of Season of Ice and Season of Flame. Copies are pretty easy and cheap to come by, but I mean, there are other more unconventional ways to play this too. So next week, expect a review of the Cortex Conspiracy, a spin-off crossover with Crash Bandicoot for the Game Boy Advance. But as always, if you disagree or agree with me, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching and take care. Have a wonderful day and goodbye.